And that just reminded me I need to go read that book again, guys. Financial management is something that definitely want to get better at. Yeah, I have the book, but I always like just take the TLA notes and never really read it cover to cover. So I should actually read this book.
Hey, good plan. Good plan. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Rochelle and Jonathan. Yeah, Audrey, something we're excited about, or is something else? One else?
Something I heard Nick Hernandez shared with me that he is working on his district letter of intent.
Hell yeah. Welcome to the club.
That's pretty exciting. That was one of my top things.
That is exciting. Welcome. All right. Anyone else? We can do one last one. Rochelle, Juliana, I don't know who wants to share. You guys, whoever unmutes themselves first, you got it. Take initiative. All right, let's see. Go.
Okay, so I thought it was really cool. I know Jonathan already said something about me, but I think it's so cool that he's just taking all the opportunities very seriously and then taking them on so greatly. One thing is I don't know, I didn't get to talk to him about this, but balancing G2S with the pilot sales office on top of everything else that he does, I think that's just really cool.
It is impressive. Yes. Thanks for chiming in, Rochelle. Well, I'm excited to kick things off here this morning and get started with our third NLG session. So do me a quick favor before we get started for today. If you need to respond to any text messages, get any communications out, do anything before we get started here today. If you haven't downloaded the handouts and if you don't have the agenda up yet, agenda is pretty simple for NLG. There's only 3 bullets on it, but we have a 2-hour session today, and then we obviously have our TLA prep tomorrow. I'm going to advise before I reach out to you, if you hopped on here late, which was if you hopped on at 9:51 or after, I want you to send me a message with what happened. And I didn't realize is not a very good excuse, because when you say I didn't realize that we were starting at 9:50 a.m., it's like, well, that's my bad, because I didn't realize you weren't paying attention on Wednesday when I spent 10 minutes talking about what time we were going to start at and what the standards need to be in our division moving forward. So that's that. I'm not going to say anything more about it, but I've made a pretty big deal about it on the last Wednesday, the last NLG prep, the first NLG prep. So it's starting to get to the point where if you can't kind of meet those standards, then you might not need to be in this group. So that's all I'll say there. But I'm excited, and thanks for everybody for showing up, being engaged, being 100% ready to rock and roll for the day. We're gonna have a really outstanding session. I'm excited to dive in. So take 10 seconds, do whatever you need to do, and we'll get things rocking and rolling. Let me cue this up here. Cool. And yeah, Jess, you can just send that over to me here as well. Welcome to NLG. We're going to go ahead and get things kicked off. So I want to start off with a quick round, and we didn't do this morning, but what do you appreciate? And actually, how many people do we have on here? Too many. I'll have 2 or 3 people share. What do you appreciate? It can be anyone, anyone. It could be something that you appreciate about our business, something that you appreciate in your life right now, someone that you appreciate, anything. I'll take 2 or 3 shares to kick things off with a little bit of gratitude and appreciation for the morning. What's a share? Yeah, Lindsay.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate Miss Jessica Shannon. We did 7 hours of push PCs yesterday, so that was a lot of fun. So I appreciate you, Jess.
Yeah, like some true champions. Love seeing the gunner group get updated in here. And yeah, anyone that's if you haven't been a manager before, the push for managers is doing those PCs. Like during the SE2, like our push is like when we have to do the SE2 push PCs the week beforehand. And it's just like, boom, boom. It's like you have to run the office and sit down with every single person on your entire team for 30 minutes and do a PC over and over and over and over and over again. So it's always, it's one of the most fun parts. And it's like also one of the most challenging parts too. It's fun and exciting because you're getting to cast vision for your candidates, getting them wired and tied into something bigger than themselves. And it's also like just a lot of work. So cool. Thanks for chiming in, Lindsay. Let's get 2 more. What do you appreciate?
Andrew, I appreciate my 2 guys on this call, Anthony Ramirez and Anthony Marino, putting their letters of intent in and getting fired up for next summer. And I just appreciate these the NLG calls.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I appreciate those guys too. I appreciate you, Mason, for leading. And, it's you guys, it's common here. You'll see people, a lot of our branches have development. Other divisions, other regions, it's not really a common thing for a branch to be deploying, offices, as a branch manager too. So something to look forward to for all of our future branches. And that's kind of what it's about. Your first branch, you run it, you're really learning how to start a business. Second time you run it, you're learning how to grow it a little bit. And third time it's learning how to really scale it out, which is exactly what Mason is doing here coming out for round 3. So I'm excited to see. One last one. We'll have one last person share and we'll move on.
I appreciate actually just being part of the pilot office, because I have so many just amazing people that are literally a phone call away, and I love that I can learn from them and really be mentored by them like constantly.
Yeah, well, we appreciate having you as part of the pilot office and being always a phone call away too. So, all right, gang, well, let's get things kicked off and ready to rock and roll. I want to welcome you all to our NLG Prep. We will dive in for the day. Make sure you have notes out and something ready to rock and roll. And I have a couple, I'm going to spend 30 minutes on opening comments, and then we're going to dive into today. We're going to go through and I thought about whether or not we should if I should kind of give you my version of it or if we should watch it live, but I'm going to give you guys an opportunity. We're going to watch live Brian Hurlman's SLC talk called The Day in the Life, which most of you didn't get a chance to see. And if you did, for the one or two of you all, I think it's going to be a good repeat. Really, really good message. And I've got some additional thoughts that we're going to have afterwards. And then we're also going to start our masterclass series today from our Go National masterclass series. So Mason Linker is going to be chiming in and giving us some goods this morning, kind of on a panel discussion about really what he did to set himself up for a nationally ranked branch, not once, but twice, which will be exciting to hear for today. So as we kick things off, I want to echo a couple different things, and I have a few stronger opening comments for this group, this morning. We've talked about really this group as the NLG, the next level group, and the group that has to choose growth. When I think about next level, I think about literally I could not run tomorrow's session and it wouldn't really matter to me. And I say that, I don't say that in a manner, I still care about all the people that are hopping on tomorrow. And this is the future of the division. This group right here is the future of the division. That's why, and by the way, that's why if you're getting a harder time for me for being late or something like that too, it's because this group is the future of the division. And what's the most important thing to me right now is we're starting to build a brand new division, and we have pound for pound one of the strongest divisions in the company. By the way, the 4 district managers that we have right now are all on pace to hit President's Banquet, which if you don't know what that is, it's one of the most decadent events that we do as that district managers have. It's a 3 or 4 day event that happens in Las Vegas. So they fly out our managers, they stay like at the Encore, which is like the rooms are all like plated in gold and stuff. It's pretty wild. You get like room credit. We have like a night an outing. They just give out like, I don't know, they spent like $100,000 on bottles of Dom Perignon and caviar. And it's a very, very nice, decadent, high class event. Probably one of the nicest events that our company does for managers. And it's very rare that you'll have, a lot of divisions have nobody that hits it. Most regions don't even have that many people that actually hit and qualify for this. We're on pace, I think, right now. And if I was a betting man, which I am, I would bet money that all 4 of our district managers that are currently, and one of them's in school in classes, finishing up her senior year at NYU. I'm pretty sure all 4 are going to hit President's Banquet this fall. That like some regions don't have 4 managers hitting President's Banquet. And that's great. We're small but mighty, and we're going to grow really, really fast and double in size. And it's very, very easy to have a strong, powerful culture when there's 3 or 4 people in it, but it gets a lot harder when there's more people on board. And so, as much as I love the extra sales and CPO to have a much bigger team, what's a lot more important to me is the culture of that team. And this is the future of our division. So if this is the future of our division, and I'm working with the culture of people that are constantly late, not on point, not good communicators, that doesn't bode well for a strong division in the future. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but that's why I think my job as a division manager is to really recognize people that are in line with the culture and that are doing the right things. And also, call out people or certain things or scenarios when it's not in line with the culture that we really want to have. So one of those things of this culture of this group is being able to choose growth. And we talked about this the first one. We talked about the second one, but I want you to just take a quick audit for a second. It's October 23rd. Our first prep feels like forever ago. It was like, I don't even know when the first prep was, September 6th or something like that. Something like that. Very beginning of September was the very first prep. And it's been about 2 months now. So, what I want to ask you is, a lot of y'all had different plans going in the fall. Some of y'all were hyper growth focused. Some of y'all is taking a little bit of a break and then get into a growth mode. I would just ask you, it's been 2 or 3 months for most of you all. What have you done since the beginning of since the end of the summer, since SC2, to be intentional about your growth? It's been like 3 months if you think about it since SC2, which, by the way, is a quarter of the year. 25% of the year has gone by. What have you done to be intentional about your growth? And I think it's very, very easy. All year we talked about 2020 vision, 2020 vision, 2020 vision, right? And then we got into this year and it was like, all right, this is the year of clarity. This is the year of, success. This is the year of things clicking. And we experienced a lot of that, right? But the reality is that this was like the opposite of 2020 vision. It was like, it was like really like, it felt like 2012 for some people, or what 2012 was supposed to be like. It's like, the world's ending. I think it's very, very easy, by the way, like we talked about that, promoted that all in 2019. And then we got to the year and it was a little bit different than we initially expected. And what I've been talking to you about all year is the year before the big year and what we're doing this year to set up next year. But I also want to challenge you all. I think it's like a lot of stuff happened in 2020, and I want, like, as a leader, to be like realistic. And I think it's very, very easy for us to assume 2020 was such a tough year that, next year it has to be good. It has to be good, right? It has to be a lot better. Nothing could get worse than 2020 possibly could. And by the way, I think for a lot of us, we are very blessed in a scenario of like, a lot of the world had a really tough year. I had one of the best years of my life. I know a lot of other people on this call also did, had a year where it was thriving. And that, by the way, says something powerful about being surrounded by people and circles of influence and who you're connected with when you go through like times that are tough for a lot of other people. And I obviously, too, as a leader, want to cross my fingers and hope next year could be exciting and great. And I'm going to cast vision for that. And also it's important to be realistic too. And I also just want to like bring some reality of like, hey guys, next year could be a lot worse, like culturally and societally, than this past year was. Next year could be a lot more painful and a lot worse than this past year was. And by the way, like some of you guys don't listen, some of y'all have listened to my podcast before. The reason I originally started it is because I think the world we're literally spinning faster. Like the earth is literally spinning faster. Time is moving faster, and technology accelerating. And there's like a lot of these challenges and problems and things and, just isolations between two sides. Wear the mask, don't wear the mask, left, right, Trump, Biden, the East, the West, socialism, capitalism, whatever you want to call it. Everything's like, pick a side, choose one. Doesn't matter what the issue is, just there's only one side or the other, pick one, and the reality is a lot of these things are like, they're not changing. They probably will get worse before they will get better. And the world is speeding up, and there's a lot of problems that can keep happening. I think for me, like 2020 is really like the beginning of what like a lot of stuff is going to keep happening. We had viruses happen, but like this probably might not be the first one, and I think like, as I'm saying this is not like some of y'all like, Andrew, are you talking like doomsday right now? No. I'm just saying, as leaders, it's important to, number one, have some reality. And there's something called the Stockdale paradox. And this is what I'm really excited about. So this is going to be the next book, and not our regular TLA class is going to read this, but just NLG. And I'm going to read this myself. I've wanted to read this book for a long time. I read snippets of it. I actually haven't read the whole thing yet too. So I'm going to be reading this right in tandem with you all. And I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for our division and where we're at. The book's called Good to Great by Jim Collins. And it's about how organizations that are good, which I would label us right now as good, we're doing pretty good. And it's the difference between the organizations and the companies that go from good to great, the ones that are built to last, and the ones that just stay good and then kind of fall apart. And in that book, there's one topic called the Stockdale paradox. And they talk about this guy from Vietnam who was he actually ran for vice president of the United States. And at the time, his name was James Stockdale, former vice presidential candidate. And during the Vietnam War, he was actually held captive as a prisoner of the war. And he was held captive as a prisoner for 7 years. So for 7 years, this guy was held as a prisoner. And he was repeatedly tortured for no reason. He had no reason to make it, like, think that he'd make it out alive. He was held into the clutches of the grim reality. And I mean, here's where I'm going with this. So he was held prisoner. He eventually made it out. And, he kind of explained this paradox. And the paradox was that, like, when they interviewed him in this book, they asked him, like, well, who didn't make it out? He said, oh, that's easy, the optimists. And they're like, what do you mean the optimists? And I don't understand. And he said, well, yeah, the optimists. He's like, because the optimists were the ones that, said, oh, don't worry, we're going to be out by Christmas for sure. And then Christmas would roll around. And they said, don't worry, we'll be out by Easter. And then Easter rolled around. And they said, don't worry, we'll be out by Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving rolled around. And then boom, it was Christmas again. Right. And those were the people that died. And he said, and they died of a broken heart, and they couldn't really make it through. They didn't have a really hold and stronghold of what reality was going to be. And they were too optimistic. And by the way, anyone that knows me knows I'm like the most optimistic person ever. Like, I'm, everything is good. I'm always like positive. But I also think as leaders too, like, and this is the challenge for the next level group. This is the challenge of a division that's good and wants to be great. This is the challenge for a lot of you all that I think, like, and this is just my outside perception. There's a lot of you all that have one of the most phenomenal opportunities that anyone your age has in front of you. And I can tell you're very, very optimistic about it, which is great, but it shows a very, very lack of insight and wisdom, because the level that you're training at, the level that you're preparing at, and the level of hubris and assumption that you have of, like, I'm just going to do well because I have some experience in the past, right? I'm just going to do better because I hopped on the TLA calls and did the bare minimum. I'm going to do better because I'm pretty good at this and stuff, or I have a past history. And the thing is, like, if 2020 taught us anything, it's that a lot can change very, very fast. And you have to focus on who you're developing into and what are you really doing right now to prepare yourself. And that's kind of what I want to bring it out. And this is what it means to be a leader, right? And I really want you guys to think about that question of, like, what it means to be a leader. And this group is supposed to be the group of leaders in our division. So and by the way, when I think about what it means to be a leader, like, these are the 4 things that I think about what it means to be a leader. Someone that has a high performance mindset, someone that leads the energy in the room, someone that, when I say ACE weekly, someone that's consistent. I interviewed a guy yesterday on the podcast, and when I was talking about it, like, this is like an ACE is somebody that, they're just constantly striving for better. I interviewed this guy. He's over 50 years old. He had the #1 documentary on Amazon last year. He wrote one of the #1 best-selling books last year. He has 1,600 podcast episodes. He gets a million downloads a month. He's featured on the Adam Carolla show twice a week. Like, this guy's doing pretty well. He was one of the first personal trainers in America. He was on the cover of every fitness magazine in the 80s and 90s. And when I interviewed him, the first thing he said, he's like, damn, he's like, when you say my resume, like, it actually makes me kind of feel good. He's like, because usually I'm like, damn, I need to get off my ass and start doing stuff. Like, I need to go out there and, like, accomplish some things. I need to go out there and, like, do something. And he's 50 something years old. And that's someone that's an ace. That's someone that's like, they're not satisfied. They're like, hey, he's got a resume that most people could dream of. And he's out here being like, I still need to go out there and impact the world and do something significant. I need to get better. I need to level up what I'm doing. And the guy's 50 plus years old. That's what it means to be an ace. And it's like, the challenge is, are we doing that in our own business? Are you doing that in your own life? Are you showing up as a true professional with what you're doing and leading the way, for other people? So, I gave you guys a couple of lists of things, and these are the things that I spoke about in our very first opening, our first NLG prep. And we said, hey, if you want to choose growth, if you want to be intentional about it, there's a couple of things that you need to do. Number 1 is develop self-awareness. You need to actually be aware. And that means be aware of your peers, develop awareness around yourself, and awareness of, like, where you're actually at right now. Like, I want to challenge you guys that if you're like, I don't care if you have been in this business for 5 years. If you're not actively working on the new programs, you're behind next summer, even if you're ahead of everybody, because the business is changing. Like, think about it this way. I've been doing this for, almost a decade now, and I'm working really, really hard right now in the fall and spring to get our programs buttoned up for next summer, because a lot of stuff is changing. And if I'm not on the cutting edge, I'm going to be left behind, and that's not just our company. That's probably most companies and situations. It's like, things are speeding up. And if you can't keep up with that, you're going to get left behind. So developing self-awareness of where you're really at. Number 2 is being intentional about your growth. And that just means having intentions. a lot of you all submitted edge plans, but like, I get it, you did the assignment, but are you following that? And the reason that I had you all make the edge plans is because I'm going to equip you all with everything I can as a leader to make your jobs easier, to make you have success during the summertime. But you have to, I can't make somebody grow. You know, you have to be intentional about your own growth. Like, you have to decide and make your own regimen. You can give someone a workout plan. It doesn't mean they're going to get fit. They have to be intentional about actually wanting to get fit. And it's the same thing, is you have to be intentional about the areas that you want to grow in. So, you know, I get sometimes having a break or having a relapse or just, you know, being like, by the way, sometimes intentionally growing is being intentional about not really doing anything at the time period. The difference though is that, are you intentional about that? Like, are you intentionally being a little bit lazy, or is it just kind of like, I'm not really in control, I'm just kind of doing stuff and my habits are leading me, I'm not leading them, right? Like, it's okay. I've been intentionally not doing anything. I've intentionally checked out and traveled and done other stuff many, many times, you know, but is there some intentionality behind it? Are you just kind of drifting through the fall, drifting through the rest of the year? You're going to drift through 2021. You're going to drift through the rest of your life and find yourself 2 or 3 years down the road being like, damn, I wish I would have been more intentional about the life I actually wanted to have. Third thing, what? Oh, actually, sorry, going back to be intentional. So I'm going to be intentional about our growth. And we didn't do it originally into the fall. Probably should have, but we're going to start to have a little bit more NLG calls. Typically, if you guys remember, if you were in the Florida United days, we pretty much had an NLG call every week or every other week. So I think that is an opportunity for us. Now, we probably will get a little bit more and dive a little bit more heavy into that into the spring. But right now, we're going to have our fall classic events. We have this NLG prep, but there is going to be, I'm just going to schedule one extra call for right now, one extra 2-hour session, because we're not going to have one at the fourth prep. So the fourth prep is the fall classic event. And we'll have an 1.5-hour session leading up to that, but we're not going to have an NLG session that day because there's just going to be too much going on. So we will have an additional session on Friday. It says 10:20, my bad. This is 11:20. Cool. November 20th. Cool. So before Thanksgiving, before the holidays really get going, November 20th, we will have an extra NLG call from 10 to 12. Okay, that will just be for NLG. There's no extra TLA session, but just keep that in mind there. Third thing is being hungry for growth. Fourth thing is to start thinking about 2021 now, which I hope I'm doing a little bit here. And again, my goal was not to scare you, but I also want to bring some real reality into the situation. And part of this, by the way, is I was just at an event this past weekend called a Genius Generator, and I'm spending the event with other people that are truly wildly successful. One of the ladies there, literally, I mean, she builds smart cities. She is like built if you ever go to New York and we fly into Buffalo, she's probably one of the most famous people in Buffalo, New York. She like built that city. She led like the LGBTQ rights movements back in like, I don't know, the 80s, before it was like ever like appropriate to do. Got a lot of heat for it. Was a leader in business, is one of the top people in all of like the Southeast for venture capital. She's a big deal. There's a lot of big deals at this event, and a lot of it was talking about, we spent talking about like, what is the future? And that's why I want to bring a little bit of this into reality, because, you know, it's very, very easy to be optimistic and just hope things are going to be great. And I'd be fired up if they are. But also, I think people are going to really be challenged for the ones that are like, oh, I just can't wait for this year to be over because next year is going to be a lot better. And then it's worse. Those are the ones that are going to have a real challenge getting through next year too. And maybe it's going to be awesome and epic. But by the way, I think there's power again in going back to what I said earlier, circles of influence, right? And being surrounded by the right people. And I'll just tell you guys that regardless of what happens in the world next year, I'm really committed. And I know there's a lot of people committed onto this call and to creating next year as one of the best years of your life. One of the best years of your life personally, one of the best years of your life financially, one of your best years of your life growth-wise. By the way, sometimes growth-wise doesn't necessarily mean all butterflies and rainbows. Sometimes that means going through some hard shit to get that growth that you want to have. That's usually when you experience the most growth, is when the times are tough and tribulating. But I still think next year could be one of the best years in most or every regard for a lot of people on this call. But you got to be surrounded. It's going to be very, very easy to to be surrounded by other people that aren't having that and aren't experiencing that too. And you got to be intentional about where you want to be. Abundant leadership, we talked about that. 1 + 1 = 3 and what you're actually building. And the last thing I'll just say is too, is like, this is my example. I want to talk about leaders leading. I know if you're in the Tampa office, Mike says this all the time. And you know, when I think about like leaders really leading the way, and I'll actually pull up this list here too. I think number one, about the opportunity that you guys actually have. I sat down with somebody yesterday and we mapped out as a district manager what their 3 years of income was going to look like. And we just mapped out, you know, conservatively. I took out some of the bonuses too. I didn't even include them in the projections. Conservatively, you know, for the next 3 years, if they sold this much, what their income was going to be. And it was a little bit shy of like 400. It was a little bit over $400,000 in income after I knocked off $30,000 just to be safe. 400 grand in income over the next 3 years. You know, this is someone that they didn't even go to college. You know, if you sat down with people and told people that you had an opportunity, you know, right now, it's like, yeah, I'll make probably 6 figures and on average, my first, you know, year out of school, or I didn't even go to school, I'm going to make about 6 figures a year. And by my 3rd year, I'll have the potential to be making 200 plus. That's what some of the top performers are making. And yeah, they're going to take me on, you know, about 5 or 6 exotic trips around the country every single year. And I'm not going to have to, I don't have a set week of vacation. I can just kind of travel and I can, you know, have the autonomy to take off when I want to. Yeah, I'm gonna be surrounded by, you know, great people, and I'm gonna be able, like if you sat down and told some of the people the opportunity that you had, and the skills that you're gonna be able to develop, the relationships that you'll be able to develop, and you told people like that opportunity, a lot of other people would be mind blown. And not only that, they'd be like, oh wow, like what on earth did you possibly have to do to get that type of opportunity? What did you do? And like, imagine if your response was like, oh, I just sold for like a month, you know, this summer. I worked hard for like a month and then I hopped on TLA calls once a week. And that's how I got an amazing opportunity. You know, like that probably wouldn't resonate very strongly with a lot of people. And I think that's like, again, I think that's kind of where some of y'all's heads at. And I don't think like your head's in line with the opportunity that you actually have. And you know, if you did, like, here's how I'll put it at this. Okay. Let me go ahead and cue up my screen here. I think leaders lead. Right. So like when I see the matrix score standings, it's just, again, a good example. We haven't even given the grades out for the drills for skills yet, but you know, like, where's NLG? Some of you all are at the top of this list. Some of you all aren't even on this list and you're on the NLG call right now, you know, like leaders lead. And I think like, hey, again, numbers don't lie. You know, so the challenge I have is like, how would you train if, you know, you really knew the opportunity that you had? How would you train? How would you train if you knew next year, hey, everyone else is going to struggle, the job market's going to be harder for college students than it even was in 2020? None of my friends are probably going to have that many job opportunities, and I'm going to have one of the highest paid, best flourishing jobs that I possibly could have, and I'm going to have that opportunity next summer. I'm going to be making more money than some teachers are making next summer as a branch manager doing a summer internship, you know? How would you train then? What would you be doing to prepare and to create that opportunity for yourself? And that's really the opportunity that you have, you know, and I want you guys to take I want you to take a minute and just write this down, journal on this real quickly. But, you know, I was thinking about it. Okay, cool. You know, and the reality is that there's serious candidates and there's not serious candidates. That's just true. You know, by the way, this group I assume would be the serious candidates. Like that's what I was talking about earlier. NLG versus regular. It's the serious candidates and the non-serious candidates. That's the difference between these two groups. But, you know, take out NLG out of it for a second. If I take the whole TLA class of 60 plus people and I made a list of, hey, the serious candidates will blank. How do I know if like, take away someone's, you know, names off the paper? If you were me, if you were a division manager, or even if you're just a fellow member in the TLA class and you're like, yeah, but the serious candidates will do this fall. The serious candidates will have this going into the summer. The serious candidates will blank. What are a couple things that you'd put on that list? Serious candidates. And I want you guys to take seriously like a minute. Just jot down a couple bullets. What are some things that the serious candidates would do that the people that say they want it but aren't really serious probably wouldn't do? I'll take 1 minute.
That's just how it goes. rising up, right until we fall. Oh, reaching in the dark, nothing's there to touch. I wish I could love. Oh, that's just how it goes. Rising up,
One more minute.
right until
This could be the list for you, or also just, hey, if you were looking outside of the TLA and you want to know who's going to crush it next summer, who's actually serious, what are some attributes, what are some things that you would know about them, numbers, what are some things that they'd be doing, what are some things that you would see from the outside if you're like, damn, that person's serious about next summer.
but I'm still numb. But I'm still numb. I'm still numb. Feelings gone. But I'm still numb. I can't be the only one. Oh, that's just how it goes. Rise and
All right. Go ahead and stop. Let me get I've got my thoughts. I've got my list. Let me get a couple people to share real quickly. We'll actually spend a few minutes on this. Well, I'd be just curious, and this would be good. And again, maybe as reaffirmation of like when you hear some of these things of like, fuck yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. You know, I'm a serious candidate. And it might be like, I'm not doing any of these things. In fact, I wouldn't have one of those lists. And it's like, all right, cool. Maybe it's time to get serious or get serious about the fact that you're not serious. You know, let's talk about it a little bit. What are some things that made that list for you all? Yeah, Audrey.
I said a serious candidate will perform like they're running a branch or a district office.
What does that mean to you?
Stepping up, being a leader in the office, you know, really like running a function or
You mean like acting like if they're involved in the staff, like acting
yeah.
like they are actually the manager?
yeah.
Cool. Like that. What's some other ones?
Yeah, I said to kind of go back on what Audrey just said. I said a serious candidate will just act as if, right? They'll act as if they already are a branch manager. I had a conversation yesterday with someone and they were like, you know, my goal is to be a branch manager. I'm like, why would you, what? I was like, why? You know, make your goal, your sales goal, make your goal, how many jobs you want to provide, make your goal, how many people you want to develop, right? So I was like, act as if you already are a branch manager, or act as if you already are that district manager.
Yeah, it's a good point. To Mason's point, it's like, hey, is your goal to like be a district manager? Or be a branch manager? It's like, well, it's not that hard. Submit your letter of intent, be on pace, just make the stats. You could maybe get a spot, but it's like, okay, but like, how about once you become a branch manager? Like, what is your what's your goal then? So I like that basically that you're chiming there. Let's get a couple others. What are some other things that you would recognize someone as serious if what? Chloe.
Yeah, so I said sacrificing now for success later. That's something that really resonated with me because, as like a college student, a lot of my friends are going out and doing a lot of fun things, but I just know ultimately I could use that time to do something that will benefit my future. Kind of like the story of the two men, little decisions here and how that changes your life over 5 years. That was really something that sunk in for me.
Yep, and it's true. I think most of you all that aspire to live, exciting, successful, whatever you define success as, whether that's happiness or finances or family or whatever. If you want to live a successful life, it probably requires sacrifice on the way. Not probably, it does. So you just have to choose when are you going to do those sacrificing? Do you want to do it when you're 30 and you got kids and you're married, or do you want to do it when you're young? And you have a little bit more. Like, it's always painful to sacrifice something. I posted something on Instagram the other day. It was like, hey, marriage is hard, divorce is hard. Like, choose your heart. You know, it was like, hey, being fit is hard. Being unhealthy is hard. Choose your hard. You know, it was like, hey, like, you know, making money is hard. Not having any money is hard. Choose your hard. You know, so I think it's like, hey, everything is going to be hard. You just have to choose. And again, this is why I talk about, hey, like, I want to remind like the opportunity that you actually have in front of you, because, you know, when you can't clearly see that opportunity, then it's easier to be like, oh, this seems like a lot better path, you know, but when you knew, if you knew the opportunity that you had, and that's a lot of like the number one question that I always get, by the way, when I just did a podcast yesterday, I hopped on another podcast. It's like, Andrew, how do you like work so hard and get so much done? You know? And a lot of times it's like, well, it's not really like the reason I did that in college. All my friends made fun of me when I was in college, and they're like, oh, you're still doing the night thing. Like, you're still like, you work so much. And I still had I probably had more fun than they did still, but that's neither here nor there. A lot of times when I got the question of like, hey, like, you know, how do you, like, why do you do this stuff? I'm like, well, it's easy because I'm clear on the opportunity that I have. Like, I don't like, you know, y'all see it, but like when people see me today, like the same people that gave me a hard time freshman year of college are like, oh my gosh, dude, like, how are you doing so much? How are you where you're at today? Like, you're killing it. And I'm like, I'm not killing it. This is just like, I knew this was going to happen like freshman year. Like, I knew this is what I was working towards the entire time. I didn't just like randomly find myself here. Like, I was just working towards this the entire time. And I was like, I was clear, like, just because you didn't see the opportunity doesn't mean I didn't see the opportunity. I knew the opportunity I had the whole time. So I worked towards it. You know, just because you all couldn't see where I was going didn't change the fact that I was still excited about where I was going. Thanks for chiming in there, Chloe. Let me get a couple of others. If serious candidates will what, Lindsay?
Be intentional. Are you doing the TLA assignment to turn in the TLA assignment, or are you doing the TLA assignment to benefit your future? I didn't run 7 hours of PCs yesterday to run 7 hours of PCs. That's not fun. When you're a branch, guess what? You got to run all your own PCs. So really, you know, using that to your advantage and on your manager's dollar with intention. So
yeah. And to your point, like, Lindsay, it's like, you know, same thing. Okay, I gave you guys a book to read, you know. Trust me, I've been in TLA before too. I've been in school before too. I know how this stuff goes. There's a handful of you all that just said, you know, literally, it's one of those things where you like hop on, you see the page, you're like, all right, I'll take some notes on this page. I'll take some notes on this page. I'm like, here's some notes. Here's some notes. I think, Andrew, this will probably be enough. And you send it over to me, you know? Or are you the person that's like, okay, cool. You're like, I have an opportunity to grow and develop who I am, regardless of whether I even continue at Cutco. And this is an opportunity for myself. And I'm doing this for me, not for the TLA assignment. You know, that's the difference between, hey, both people did the assignment, but one person's intentional and one person actually taking a lot out of it and being transformed by it. Another person's like, you know, wasted their time for a little bit and they stayed in contention with the bare minimum of being in TLA. Right. So let's one or two more before we wrap up here. Yeah. Anthony.
Yeah. It's kind of like if there's a wall in front of you, the people that are going to succeed goes right through it. And the people that take the easy way out is going to go around it. Right. You know, at the end of the day, the person who goes through is going to benefit more. Right. And get better, even though it kind of looks the same. If you viewed them, I got better besides they didn't.
That's right. Cool. Let's get anyone else. Jessica. And Adria, are you raising your hand or just cool. Jessica.
I was just gonna say building habits now. So really being, like Lindsay said, intentional, but especially with habits of like expanding your capacity, like your routines, like your energy management. So when it is time to like really step into that, like that's not the downfall.
I like that. Anyone else want to share before we move on here? Cool. So I got a couple on my list, and I'm interested and surprised that some of these didn't make the list. But here's what I think about when I think about leaders that lead, the serious candidates. Number one, okay, the serious candidates will sell, and I really want to stress this one for a quick second. Because, and this is what I mean by this group of I'm not talking about TLA. I'm not talking about first year reps. I'm talking about NLG selling for CTC and capture the cut push. You know, every year when I was in TLA, I sold for the push. Every year, literally. And some of you all, like, here's just, I'm just going to say it, like, leaders lead the way with their sales. I don't think you can be a leader in a sales organization if you don't know how to sell and you don't have a career track of selling. If you're under 30 grand in sales, I don't think you know how to sell. I'm just telling you that right now. No offense to anyone if you're under 30K in career sales. I don't think you know how to sell if you're under 30K in career sales. There's a reason, by the way, you can still be a successful manager like that. Kate Arbuthnot, 7 grand in sales, one of the most successful district and division managers our company's ever had. Okay. But there is a extremely high correlation. There are exceptions and nuances. There is an incredibly high correlation to people that have high personal sales and people that have had high success as managers. What did Eddie De Las Cuevas do after his, average, not so hot, branch? And it was probably, if he was he was a first year branch, but he'd been in with us for several years. So I think for his standards, 100 grand as a branch was not really exciting or hot for him. What did he do that fall and spring? He went out and he's probably sold another 15, 20 grand, even though he was already at like 70, 80K in career sales. When you sell, you have more income, you have more confidence. And the number one way that you're going to become a better coach is not listening to PDI videos and listening to me teach you guys how to coach people. It's by actually knowing what you're talking about. The way you get it, like, think about it this way. If you're going to coach people on fitness, what's going to make you a better fitness coach? Learning how to coach people, or learning more about fitness because you've done it before and you've done the exercises and you've gone out there and you've lost the weight and you've become fit. Who's going to be the better fitness coach? The one that spent more time learning about how to coach people, or the one that knows more about fitness because they've done it themselves over and over again? There's an element to actually like leading, and by the way, if you're at like 80K personal sales, 100K personal sales, and you're like, Andrew, I don't really feel like selling for the push, whatever, that's one thing. But I'll tell you guys what, like, I think, again, this is a different division. I think if you were part of the old Florida United, look, sometimes there it's like, oh, you're an NLG. You've already gone through TLA once. Like, don't worry, you don't have to sell for the push. It doesn't really matter as much. That's not going to be the case here, guys. Like, I want to make that known too, that like that's not going to be the standard that I have for this division. I can't imagine. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I can't imagine having like the leaders of the organization perform the lowest. That doesn't really make sense in my head. It's like the people that are the top and lead do the least. Imagine having a team or a sports team where all the starters play the least in the game. Imagine the finals and, every single good player on the Heat is just sitting on the bench while all the other players play. It makes no sense. It wouldn't happen. Right. And I just think about this, like, hey, leaders lead by example. And some of you all, like, you sold your first summer, you sold 20, 30 grand, and like you haven't sold in 18 months. Some of you all have never even done a demo virtually. And you think you're going to go out and run a good office and lead other people on how to do a demo that you've never even done, or a presentation you've never even done before, and then it's been a year or two since you sold the past time. So some of y'all are first years. You're like, what are you talking about, Andrew? It's like, well, you can talk to other people that haven't sold in a long time. But I just think, hey, this group should be leading the push. And by the way, I don't even if it's then, I just think there needs to be a standard for some of you all too. There's like, the Masons of the world on here that, have ran 3 and multiple offices too. I still expect Mason. Now, maybe Mason doesn't need to have a 10 grand push, but I still expect every person on this call, like there's no zeros are not going to be tolerated in this division. It's not okay to call yourself a leader of an organization and then be throwing up like zeros, which is like, I didn't even try, or I tried and I have 0 skill set because I couldn't create any results when I tried, like that's, I think, can't be tolerated in our organization if we want to actually build something that's special. And the reason I say this too is like, you all know this, I don't care. You guys, as a division manager, like nothing changes because someone went out and sold 5 grand for CTC on our sales report. Like, it impacts me not at all, but I know that it does impact you. I know that it does impact you guys. I know that it impacts your startup. I know that it impacts your confidence. I know that it impacts your ability to coach other people. I know that it impacts your career sales. And I know if you want to be a good branch or district manager, it will 100% impact your success next summer. That's why I care. That's why I want to have standards for it, so I just want to echo that. I know you guys have heard that. This is not my tirade on going out in NLG, but like, hey, we got a push coming up. And I would be starting to think like, if you were sitting back thinking like, oh yeah, I won't do anything for this push because I'm an NLG, like that, you've got the wrong mindset on. you know, and I don't want to see any zeros from anybody in this group when we actually go into this push. And I think leaders need to lead the way from the front. You know, and when you sell more, you will be more confident. And the last thing that I'll say on this too is, again, I did a podcast with Andrew Biggs yesterday, and this was not Cutco oriented. I was just talking about stuff in general. We talked about, hey, what's the most important thing for young people to do in the ages of 20 to 30? What's the most important? We got a topic about how skills are really, really important, and what are the most important skills? And I was like, hey, the most important skills for anybody to learn, no matter what industry you're in. I didn't even bring up Cutco in the interview. I just said sales and influence. You know, and as I was saying that, it's like, okay, cool. Well, how do you develop those skills? And I'm like, well, by going out and doing it, you know? And so like, I truly believe, like, I don't even care if you don't become a branch manager next summer. You will be a better individual and a better person and be more equipped to succeed in life the more that you have sold Cutco personally. It's just a fact, you know, because you are developing your sales ability. And you don't develop your sales ability by reading a book, by hopping on TLA calls, by learning more from Andrew or from your district manager. You can learn knowledge, right? But that doesn't develop your skills. Skills is by actual experience and practice, getting in front of people, speaking and actually selling, and messing up and having failures and then having some successes along the way. That's how you learn how to sell. You know, that's how you develop your skill set. And like, again, this is why, if this is not for me, this is for you all. And I don't think I'd be doing a good job as a manager or leader if I didn't like share that with you, and like how I genuinely think it is of utter importance, you know? So I'll leave it at that. Leaders lead, you know, with the sales. Leaders lead with startup and income, you know, and like their financial habits. Leaders lead with the skill set, you know, and making sure like, hey, am I really fine tuned with my skill set? Are there areas where I know I need to work on? And, you know, am I working on those areas? Leaders lead their way with energy. I think going back to, I think Jess talked about just developing the right habits right now. And by the way, you know, with this stuff, I think like, hey, you can lead the energy in the room without being the leader of the room. You know, there's some of you all on here that have had positions in the past summer, and you're not really doing anything like you don't need to be involved in a staff to be a leader in the division. You really don't. I never was involved in any office in the fall and spring in my entire college career. I wasn't ever involved in any office in the fall and spring until my senior year, and I ran my own office. But I was never involved in an office. You know, I was still, I'm not put myself on a pedestal, but I was probably the lead. I was a leader, like the TLA leader of the Florida United Division or the Florida Caribbean Division for years and years and years. Was it because I was doing the most and the most involved? No, it's because the way that I showed up energetically, the way I showed up to meetings, the way I was on point with stuff, the way I would deliver when things were asked of me and I had an agreement with somebody. It was the way that I showed up, not how much or how often or what title I had or what I was doing specifically during the background of when I was showing up, you know, and that's all about the energy that you show up in the meeting. So same thing with the NLG calls. It's like, are you a leader on these calls? Are you a leader in TLA, or are you just like the person that like hops on and scrubs by? Are you teaching other people? You know, like who's your teach for circle? Are you really leading? Is like, hey, are you teaching for other people? If you have some people that like you're actually coaching and giving mentorship and leadership to right now, you know, and a lot of times, like, by the way, like if you're ever having trouble holding yourself accountable, get 2 or 3 people that you're actively coaching and teaching, and you'll start holding yourself accountable. A lot of you all know that too. Like I always talked about that. Like I freaking hated waking up as a branch manager and doing alliances and having to like not hop on my computer at 8 a.m., but be at the office at 7:30 a.m., dressed and suited up and ready to rock and roll. And the reason that I was never late, I was always on time, was not because I was never late. Like I was actually like known for being late to shit all the time. If you were one of my friends, you hit me up to go somewhere, I was always late to stuff. But I was never late to my office ever, because I knew that I always had people counting on me. And I knew that there was people literally going to be sitting at my door at 7:45 a.m. And they're going to be like, and they were waiting to come to that meeting, to get coached, to get inspired, to get leadership, to get like coaching. And if I wasn't there ready for them, they were going to be let down, you know? So if you're having trouble, if you're like in a funk or anything like that too, grab 2 or 3 people underneath your wing and take care of them, because you will show up more so for them than sometimes you will hold your own self accountable too. So one thing that we will do, by the way, I'll do this after our break here. We're going to do some mentor-mentee pairings for the CTC push. So mainly for people that have gone, that are second years. So if you've been assistant manager in the past, or if you've gone through, you know, this program already, or TLA, we're going to do some mentor-mentee pairings with some of the people in TLA. So each person can grab, you know, 1 or 2 people, and you can kind of coach and mentor them a little bit through the CTC push. And that might mean, really inspiring them and coaching them with their sales. That might mean, helping them navigate D2 because they're just in a funk and they are struggling to even hang in there. It might mean helping them and coaching them on a staff. I don't know exactly what it is, but, we can do a little bit of coaching there here too as well. And to wrap things up before we go to, we'll take a quick break here in a second, but I think this is what I'll leave off. So I'm going to give you guys, I'll give you a little bit more direction on the book, by the way, this time. So rather than, I think one of the problems with the How to Win Friends and Influence People was I just assigned the book versus giving us like chapter deadlines. So with this one, we're going to have more time, by the way. It's not going to be due at the next prep on the Fall Classic. It will be due on the December prep. So you got about 2 months to be able to read through this, and we're going to read through it together as a team. I'm going to read through it as myself, and we'll debrief a little bit on our NLG calls here as well. But I think good to great. It's going to be a really, really important book for a lot of us, especially for you guys that already ran offices this past summer, or you were in a position of leadership. And really, number one is the vision. And also for you personally, how do you go from, being good to really being great? And I'm really excited to dive into that. I've been kind of looking forward all year long to go through this with you guys too. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll come up for air. So let me quick, and you guys can post into the TLA chat. Take 30 seconds to go ahead and get out. Just take 30 seconds to write down whatever your biggest light bulbs are from kickoff today. And we're going to dive into the growth material. So biggest light bulbs, take 30 seconds. You can post them in the TLA chat as well after you write them down. And once you get some of your light bulbs down, go ahead and post them into the TLA chat. Thank you. Let them roll in. And I'll have just one or two people share. Just anything that stuck out to you a lot as we open up comments, or any light bulbs or takeaways for you personally. And then we'll take a quick break and dive into some of our growth material here for the day.
I think biggest thing that came up for me was just two things. Making sure that during the fall we're being intentional as well too. So I think that you can be in your office, you can be doing stuff, but you can even go you can go farther and be intentional about what you are doing in the office and working on the skills that you do need to cultivate and grow and so on and so forth. And then also just being engaged on the TLA calls. So this session with I think Brian Hurlman, and then Mason's upcoming talk, and then tomorrow as well too.
Yep. Cool. Let's get one or two more.
I really.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. What's you got?
I really liked what you were saying about that guy that was the first trainer. Like, he is now 50 plus years old and still is not content, and just always looking for how can I be the best version of myself, rather than I made it versus I'm not going to stop working until I'm just not going to stop, because I deserve that for myself and to the world.
Yep. I love that. Let's get one more. Rob, I was going to call on you. What's the takeaway for you, man?
I really like the choose your hard, because it really just is that, choose your hard. You can either be fat, or you could either be fit. You could either be broke, you could either be wealthy. So it's just, what path are you gonna take?
Yep, everything's hard. Life's hard. You gotta choose the hard though.
Yep, and biggest takeaway for me is just being intentional when you do show up. So if you're running a meeting, kind of like what Lindsay said, if you're doing 7 hours worth of PCs, do it to learn. Don't do it just because it's your job. So I think that's the biggest takeaway here today.
Yeah, especially for all of you guys that are actually involved in an office on staff, Jonathan, Jess, Rob, Lindsay, Cassie. Like a lot of y'all are involved in office. I think, again, I would go back to that too. Sometimes you can learn through osmosis, just do your job. You're just going to kind of learn as you go. And there's also another level of being intentional about what do you actually want to learn before next summer. Especially for those of y'all that have, like, if you're a brand new first year and you're on staff, then like, you're probably fine. Just be on staff. Like everything is learning experience for you. But for the people that have been around the block a little bit, it's more important for you all to be intentional about like what you're actually doing. That's why you can work in this office all fall and spring and learn close to nothing. You know, you can also work very little and be very intentional about where you're growing and what you're learning and what you're observing. You know, one of the biggest things that I did do in the fall and spring when I was a member, when I was in Tallahassee, was I would go to Carlos Cordero's staff meetings, even though I wasn't on staff and wasn't involved in the office, and I would just go there and watch. And I wasn't involved in anything, but I would go there and watch just because I didn't know how to run a staff. I never worked with a staff before. Carlos was good at leading in staff. He developed great people. And I just took notes on not the staff meeting, not even what he covered. I took notes on the way that he ran the meeting, the questions that he would ask his people, the way he would teach them. And that was one of the first times I learned to start, the way that you teach people is through asking questions, not through telling them what to do, which is how I would run a staff at that point in time. Would have been like, all right, you do this, we're going to do this, I'm going to do this, versus being like helping people understand and come to their own conclusions by asking, cool, so what do we do now? What's the question? Like pulling the answers out of people versus telling people what to do was a big thing. And like that, I would have never had the success that we had. We wouldn't have broken the record that summer if I didn't do those little things, you know, and go to a couple of those staff meetings, be intentional about, I need to learn from this. What can I pull out of this and learn for the future too? So, all right, guys, 10:57. Let's take a quick 5-minute break. Cool. And then we'll hop right back in. So just mainly, we don't really need a break. It's a 2-hour call, but if you need to use the restroom, get water, anything like that too, 10 or 11:02, we'll get right started and dive right back in. See y'all in a second. All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to cue it up. I'm going to do a little bit of debrief afterwards. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the message as we go through it. But this is a message that Brian Hurlman gave at SLC. And immediately when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is going to be really good for our manager candidates to actually go through. So I think a little bit what he talks about is kind of the objectives of each day. So this is something I would take heavy notes on. Literally when he gave this talk, I read down almost every single word that he said during it. It's only a 20-minute talk. So we're going to dive right into it and get ready to rock and roll. And we'll debrief a little bit at the end. And then we'll wrap up with Mason's masterclass series here. Cool. Let me go ahead and cue this up. Cool. Actually, let me make sure everyone can hear it. Cool.
Over cup race in that category. He and his team are crushing 2020.
Does it look better full screen?
I got a quote from his region manager, Mr. Dennis. Scott said, in 3 years as a DVM, he has taken the position by storm. Every manager that Brian has inherited has increased their production under his leadership,
right?
And his division is a pipeline of some of the best candidates in the region. Brian is known for his energy and charisma, but he balances that with outstanding programs. The entire region has made the move to Brian's training seminar. He and his wife, Alexandra, celebrated, I believe, their 2nd anniversary in September, bought their first house that same month, so congrats to the Hurlmans. And on a personal note, Brian has passion for this business. You all know this. He has passion that is second to none. He is one of the most requested speakers at SLC every single year. I love this guy's energy. I love his knowledge of the business and his heart. He loves helping other people, but I believe this guy is just getting warmed up. Speaking to you today on a day in the life, blow up the chat for our DVM from Virginia, Mr. Brian Hurlman.
Thanks, Jeff. So excited to be here. Vector family, SLC. This is number 12 for me. I loved as we were coming into the event and the waiting area opened up, seeing all our first time attendees. And one of the things that I think is really, really special about this event, in fact, special about our organization, really unique to our company, is that we share best practices as often and as boldly as we possibly can. It's one of the reasons I think we're able to grow in the face of a pandemic. And it's one of the reasons I'm so proud to be in a leadership role with Vector and Cutco. Welcome to SLC. And we get to pull back the curtain a little bit. You know, I remember it being a district manager, and I remember frequently wondering what the hell my division manager was doing all the time. You know, I felt like I was Chaz in Wedding Crashers. Like I never knew what he was doing back there. And this is a fun message for me because I get to dial down on what does it take, campaign in, campaign out, to put together a kick-ass sales report. And you know, it was funny because I remember when we were coming back from Paris, I remember that if we were peeling back the layers, if we were taking back the curtain, it was the Wizard of Oz. This was the face that we all had as we got back from Paris. It was like, oh my God. So hold on. Everything we've done for 40 years. Okay, we're gonna pivot that. Great. And it's funny because Ryan Nicholas was Alexandra and I's realtor. We bought a house a couple weeks ago. And Ryan was a district manager only a couple years ago. He was a DM through 2014 in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And when we were in the home buying process, I remember him asking, you know, how's the business going? And even as someone who has deeply embedded positive expectation roots with his time with Cutco, Ryan worked with us for 4 years as an undergraduate and was a DM for 3 years afterwards. He kind of asked me with a sensitivity level of like, hey, like, how's it going? And I remember telling him that organizationally we were at 50%, and then it was this face. And I feel like if anyone that you were to tell that, you know, as a $250 million organization, that you know, the kind of growth that we experienced in 50% growth in Virginia, that would be the face that you'd get. And you know, the thing I love most, the thing I tried to do most in my organization, in my pilot office, the thing I try to do for my branches, the thing I try to do for my new DMs, even my pillars, is really chisel down to the most simplistic ideas and big rocks that we possibly can. I think there's so much elegance and simplicity. And so the objective of my message is to go through a day in the life, a day by day frame of reference of what does it take to win the day. If I'm in my pilot office and I'm thinking about the Fairfax pilot, what does it take to win the day? And I want to dial it down to a couple simple concepts. One of the ones I talk about with my division often is the idea of accomplishment versus activity. I remember my PSM coming over for a debrief after an early summer day. And this is early summer, and Jeremy comes home. Jeremy comes over, and Jeremy was originally born and raised in London, England. He has a light British accent, and I remember asking, he came in, and I said, you know, how did the day go? He was like, oh, it was awesome. I'm like, great. What did you get done? And he's like, well, I did this and I did this and I did this. I'm like, okay, Jeremy, but what did you get done? What did you accomplish? And he started to go off with a couple more to-do list items. And I said, no, not what did you do? What did you accomplish? And it pivoted his thought process from just being busy and just doing the things and running the functions to what is the objective of what we are trying to accomplish through this function. And so I think that's the first place to start. And, I think listen, our vector calendar, it starts on a Sunday. There's a reason that your calendars for the month start on a Sunday. And I want to go through a big three for each one of the 7 days of a week of how do you put together a kick-ass sales report. Number one on a Sunday.
So he's about to go through literally every day of the week and give you the big three for every day. So you guys remember last NLG session when we started going through, we were talking about them. Here's this packaged a little bit better. Okay. And I'd make sure you have these down somewhere where when you go into the summer next year of summer 2021, you're going to be able to look back and be like, oh, what's my big three for the day? Boom, boom, boom. And you've already got them listed here. You don't need to ask Andrew. And by the way, when you send me your big three, I'm going to remember next summer in the mornings who took notes on this and who has them and who's got some other obscure big threes.
Is fast starter influence. Before we do anything else in the pilot, first touches of the day are to our fast start group. And when I say influence, by the way, I am rarely talking about a text message. In a time in which we are recruiting big, I think it's really we can fall victim to the ease of a text. And I think that in doing so, we're losing an opportunity for a relationship to develop, for real influence to be had, for someone to feel like an individual, like I matter and what I'm doing today matters. And maybe as a district manager, maybe it's not every single fast starter in your group, but can you get a good conversation with 5 to 10 people that day that are going to go out and create $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 in CPO? If I can have 5 good conversations that create a 2K day for my top 5 fast starters, boom, I just created $10,000 in CPO through those 5 conversations. That could have been a total of 45 to 60 minutes of my time. Fast starter influence is number one. I think so much of our sales report comes from that fast start group. If this isn't our number one focus on Sunday, first thing in the morning, I don't know what else is. Because the other thing is, if you're doing Sunday right, it is busy. Bullets are flying. And so number one is fast start influence. Number 2 is the SMRA kickoff meeting. And I want to tell you something. As a division manager with 16 office locations this summer, I ran every SMRA kickoff meeting. I kicked off SMRA shifts on a day-to-day basis, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Why? Because I know, and you're going to hear more about this from Jeff Gamboa later on today. You're going to hear this hit multiple times over the course of the next 2 days. But this SMRA kickoff meeting, having people focused on what are our benchmarks and standards, what are our goals and our objectives, how are we going to get there? What are some simple tips that I can give that are confidence building, where I can do some recognition and I can build some culture with this team of recruiting assistants the exact same way that I would with my sales team on a Wednesday. That's how I think about this Sunday SMRA kickoff meeting. I want to recognize results. I want to talk about goals and objectives. I want to review stats from last week, and I want to give them some confidence building content as we go into the day. And then I would say the third most important thing on a Sunday is your phone jam execution. And when I think about phone jam execution, by the way, here's one thing I would challenge you to do. Think about the things that you would have done in an in-person phone jam and bring them to your virtual phone jam. Like all the little things that you didn't really think about, like the kneel down conversations where you're listening to the sales rep and giving them some feedback from their call, right? Or the quick accountability conversations based on how many calls the person has made. Phone jam execution on Sunday, in my mind, here's what I think about. Can I average a minimum of 5 demos per head phone jamming? And can I make sure that a minimum of 80% of my sales team is on that phone jam? In my mind, that's phone jam execution. I have 80% attendance and I get an average of 5 demos ahead, right? And so when I think about phone jam execution, the other thing I'm thinking about is what can we do to make sure that this person is excited to come back to this phone jam next week? Okay, I don't want to just get 5 today and have this person think, well, that really sucked. I don't ever want to come to one of those again. In fact, I would think that would be counterintuitive. I would rather them get 4 demos booked, would be like, that was really fun. What are you doing to make it fun? What are you doing to make it lively? What are you doing to make it exciting? That is the most important part of the phone jam, making them want to come back. The way when representatives are phone jamming, you should be phone jamming through your sales team, recognizing individual performance and driving number of calls and demo goals booked. That's Sunday. Monday, first thing Monday morning is we do a dig in staff meeting in our pilot. This is our longest staff meeting of the week. This is typically a 90-minute staff meeting. In the staff meeting, first thing that we do, and by the way, I want to use this as an opportunity to plug the masterclass series. You know, we have 30-minute windows during SLC, and I'm just giving you a taste of a lot of content that I'm going to be unpacking in a lot more detail during the masterclass. So come with notes and come with questions ready to dig in, and we can extend this conversation. So during the staff meeting, we're doing a couple things. Number one, we're reviewing reports, and you might think, Brian, you're not a numbers guy, right? You're the personality guy. Well, I realized in order to go from the guy that's only the personality guy to a division manager is I had to be able to know what numbers were important, what numbers to focus on, and how to increase and drive those key performance indicators. So here's what I'm focused on reports: manager efficiency report, receptionist efficiency report, cycle report. That allows me to know how many PRs did my PSM set? What was their show? How many PRs did my AM set? What was their show? How many PRs have my SMRAs set? What was their show? So going into Monday morning, we have a clear picture on what do we need to make happen in the next 48 hours with urgency in order for us to hit our goal. And our recruiting goals for the week. So reports is number one. The second thing we do in our staff meeting is a weekly projection with newsletter targeting. We do a projection 1 to 2K, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and then.
Hey guys, just one more thing that I want to add here. Most of you all, if you don't have a staff, you're not running a staff meeting. But I do want to add that one thing I always did as a manager. When I didn't have anyone on staff, I had a staff meeting with myself. Like there was literally a time in my schedule where I did my staff meeting, which is going through these exercises yourself. I think it's even more important and more imperative to do it when you're by yourself than when you even have a staff in the first place too. So just a little tidbit there for those of you guys who are like, oh, I don't have a staff, don't worry about this. No, I would make sure you're still doing these exact same things. So.
Also, we go through and pick who are we targeting to get on the newsletter. The old school Drew Frank 2.5 metric is as true today as when he told us about it back in, I don't know, 2010 or 11 or 12. Take the number of people on the newsletter, multiply by 2.5. That is what you're going to sell for the week, and it is eerie how accurate it is. So we're focused on newsletter projection. The third thing we're doing in that staff meeting is we're thinking about events. We're thinking about events. What time is our SLDM this upcoming week? And who do we want to target from the training class this week and last week to get there? What's our attendance goal for that SLDM? That is your division manager's demo. That is your division manager's demo. You want more development. You want a bigger development pool. You want better rep retention. Get them in front of your DVM for that SLDM. That's your division manager's demo. And then the other thing we're thinking about under events is conference promotion. You know, maybe we have an event in 3 weeks. Guess what? SLC just finished. SLC Push just finished. Guess what I'm already promoting in our pilot office? Olean Push. It starts October 29th. We are literally promoting it tomorrow, and our last push just ended. We're 3 weeks out. We're starting to promote it now. Why? Because it's a staff meeting topic every Monday morning. And then we're reviewing the interview schedule with recruiting goals. And again, it's major urgency on how many do we have set and how many do we want to sign today? How many do we have set and how many do we want to sign tomorrow? How many do we have set for interviews? The way that we focus on driving reps with demos, how many demos do you have today? How many do you have tomorrow? How many do you have the next day? It's a similar mentality with recruiting in our office staff on Mondays. The second thing is AT1 execution. I'm going to keep this simple. Let me tell you when I think about winning AT1, okay, here's what winning AT1 looks like. You ready? Okay. 80% attendance, 5 demos booked, per person and at least 3 PRs set per head. That's a win. What am I focused on? Attendance, demo creation, and recruit creation. I'm not worried about the content. I'm not worried about closing percentage. I'm going to teach them some things with Rex and with their names list. I'm going to make sure they have more people to call, but I'm going to focus on creating demos, and I'm going to focus on creating PRs. Number 2 is AT1 execution, and that's what high-level AT1 execution looks like to me. I'll unpack a little bit more of that in the masterclass series. And the third thing is an SMRA shift kickoff. If I were to tell you the 3 most important things that I do in my office, as a division manager with 16 offices, I would tell you that this is one of the 3 things. I kicked this shift off every single week of the summer. I wasn't on the whole 3-hour shift, but I kicked it off. I did some recognition from the day before. I shared our goals for the day of. I maybe threw out a contest for the day, and I got people taking action. That's Monday. Let's talk Tuesday. Tuesday, number 1 is staff communication. Staff communication, listen, in your organization, it may look like a text, it may look like a call. In our organization, it looks like a staff meeting. We did that Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. On Monday mornings, it was a little bit longer. It was a 90-minute staff meeting. And every other morning of the week, Monday through Friday, we did at least a 30-minute staff meeting with our pilot staff. Number 1, staff communication. Why? Well, I want them to know, what do we need to do to make our PR numbers and our recruiting numbers surge today? Tuesday is the PR surge day. We only have, we run training on Thursdays and Fridays. We run a 2-day training in the Eastern region in the Virginia division. And I want to make sure that I am maxing out Tuesday and Wednesday recruiting and getting that set for training number where we want it to be. And for us, we were focused on, can we get triple digits set for training each week in our pilot? Staff communication is critical. We have to have people working together. Number 2, outgoing PDI, okay? PDI stands for personal daily influence. PDI is when you pick up a phone, you dial phone numbers on it, and then instead of using your fingers to type words and letters, you speak to a human being. You can either do that over FaceTime or a voice call. On Tuesdays, it is outgoing PDI. Okay, our objective is on a Tuesday between 9 and noon, before noon, can we have a one-on-one conversation with everyone on our sales team? This is one of the things that I wish we would have done better in our pilot office, by the way, this summer. We got inundated with the number of recruits, and I've made sure that moving forward, already in our winter break game plan, already in our next summer game plan, we have at least 3 people who are going to be designated Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday to just doing outgoing PDI for 3 hours every morning. This is an old school lost art form. Okay, some of you might even might not even heard of this acronym before. I want to have a good 5-10 minute conversation with each rep of my team. I want to talk about daily and weekly goals. I want to talk about Wednesday phone jam, and I want to set that up the right way with a call expectation and a demo set goal. The key to Wednesday phone jam execution is the Tuesday setup through outgoing PDI. And then number 3 is day 4 PCs. I want to make sure I get some time with our top performing fast starters. That's Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to focus on phone jam execution. That's number 1. We want to make sure that we create a minimum of 5 demos ahead in the phone jam. Again, same thing as Wednesdays. We want to make it fun. We want to make it lively. We want to teach. Okay, it's not just a come do, it's a come teach. Let's learn. We got the music playing. We got people yelling Silver Cup and VA all day into the screen. It's not just a silent movie. I want noise. I want people getting into it. And again, we're phone jamming as you're phone jamming. Absolutely critical. Team meeting execution. Here's what I think about when I think about a team meeting execution. When I think about operating at a high level for your team meeting, here's what I'm thinking about. Teach through recognition. Teach through recognition. Number 2, have a vision or a what I'm building talk every single week at your team meeting. Number 3, make sure that you're talking about your standards. And number 4, make sure that you're having fun. That's executing a team meeting at a high level. One of the things I want to try to define in this message is that there's a difference between doing something and doing it at a high level, doing it and executing it at a high level. Team meeting execution. And then number 3, the third thing I want to get done every Wednesday is a group recruiting activity. Whether this is triple threat or 3-way texting or an SMRA post. I have, in our case in the pilot this summer, 80, 100 people in front of me. I want to take advantage of these people being in front of me, being excited, seeing the recognition, the big paychecks. I want to use this as a recruiting opportunity. That's Wednesday. Thursday, we got to communicate with the staff again. Again, this for us in the pilot, this is a staff meeting in the morning. This is a 30-minute meeting with our staff. And again, we're focused on what do we need to do. On Thursdays, we want to talk about what kind of conversations need to happen with people with makeup phone time. What kind of conversations need to happen with people with demo goals and making sure that we're holding people accountable to agreements that they've made. So staff communication is number 1. Number 2 is my day 1 of training. And listen, some regions are running 2 days, some regions are running 3. Some regions are running it Wednesday through Saturday. The days are different. I'm not going to talk about the nuts and bolts of the training seminar. Here's what I will say. Nail your opening comments, day 1 phone jam, and your day 1 PCs. Some things that we do in that day 1 PC, I'm checking their temperature. I want to make sure that that this person is feeling good. I want to make sure that I'm building a relationship with this person. I want to make sure I'm reviewing their best 5 customers, the phone approach, names list assignment, and greasing the skids for the PR talk. Again, we can unpack that day 1 PC in a little bit more detail in the master class after SLC. And then number 3 is outgoing PDI. Again, on outgoing PDI, we're reviewing the Wednesday phone jam. We're doing a demo goal review. We're talking about their next phone time. And here's the big thing. When you're doing this outgoing PDI on Tuesdays and Thursdays, live in the airtight window that is today, tomorrow, the next day. How many do you have today, tomorrow, the next day? Live in that airtight window. That's your Thursday. On Friday, number 1 is we're going to focus on day 2 of training. And again, I'm not going to unpack the nuts and bolts of day 1 and day 2 of training. Here's what I will say. Nail the day 2 phone jam. You need to make sure that every rep is leaving training with 10 demos. Nail the day 2 phone jam. Nail the PR talk. The legs feed the wolf. You need to have PR names. That is the fuel to the car. It doesn't matter how big your engine is. If you don't have gas to put in the car, it's not going to go anywhere. The legs feed the wolf. And then your day 2 PC. In the day 2 PC, I'm reviewing names and phone numbers. I'm doing a review of the queue system. I'm talking about best 5 top 10. I'm doing a schedule review. And if I have time, I want to do a review of their PR list. Maybe even look at their best 5, their best 10, and get them in a 3-way text with their best 5 or their best 10, and get some recruiting rolling. If there's someone that's fired up and someone that I know is a PR of a PR, I'm going to build their confidence, and I'm going to review a couple simple tips. Communication standards. That's really what I'm going to review. I'm going to review communication. I'm going to help build their confidence, and I'm going to send them off on a positive note. People who feel good do good. On Friday, we're also focused on PR goal commitment conversations. I'm having these goal and commitment conversations with my assistant manager team. As a division manager, I'm having these conversations with my branches and my districts. As a district manager, you're having these conversations with your staff and maybe even with your top couple SMRAs. And I want to get people thinking on Friday about this next cycle and kicking off the next recruiting cycle with a bang. Number 2, and then number 3 is staff night. On Fridays, we had our staff over to the house. We had pizza. We hung out, and we taught them how to take some first weekend calls. We got some good time, and it was both a training opportunity and some carefree timelessness, an opportunity for relationship building and skill development. Maybe it's not Friday night, but I do think this is a great piece for our district manager team. Bringing it home on Saturdays, here's what we're going to do. We're going to kick off the PR cycle with some gusto. The PR cycle does not start on Sunday. The PR cycle starts on Saturday, baby. Okay? And I'm going to kick that thing off the right way. As a division manager, every single Saturday from 10 to 10:30, I was kicking off the PR cycle with our division. This is something that you can distill down and do with your assistant manager team. Kicking off that PR cycle the right way. Number 2, fast starter communication. Again, this is a big demo day. Fast starters are out for many of them on their first set of demos. I want to know who they're seeing. I want to help build their confidence. I want to give them I want to review communication standards. So I want to have some key fast start communication conversations that day. And then number 3, I know this sounds weird, but a little bit of rest and relaxation. You know, I would rather get 100% of you, 6 days a week than 80% of you 7 days a week. A little bit of rest and relaxation goes a long way for putting you in a position where you can operate at a high level as a manager. You have to be able to replenish. One of the things I really try to talk frequently to my division about, to my people about, and anyone that I'm developing is the idea of, it's your role in your organization to be the thermostat versus the thermometer, right? The thermostat tells the temperature. The thermometer determines the temperature. Are you giving direction? Are you the person who's turning up the heat in your organization, or are you just there kind of checking the temperature? I want to challenge all of you to use SLC, to use the masterclass series following it, to be the Nest thermometer in your organization. You can do it Bluetooth. It's from an app, okay? Turn up the dial, turn up the heat for the rest of 2020 and going into 2021. Thanks so much, team.
Woo! Mr. Brian Hurlman. Everybody, please, one word in the chat. Brian, take a look. Conviction, awesome, empowered, charged, clarity, energy, boom, temperature, fire. I can't even see them all. That's awesome. Well, Brian, thank you for bringing the goods. What a phenomenal, phenomenal message. Great details. Thanks for sharing the goods, brother. Hey, everybody, before we go into break, here's what we're going to do. It's 2:17.
All right, we're going to stop that share real quickly. How was that?
Fire.
Fire. It was fire. Yeah, it was even more fire watching it the second time. That is one that I would recommend you watch like 2 or 3 times. Like there are nuggets in all of that. I hope that you guys got some notes down. I sent some of the slides. I think, Audrey's got the slides too. Boom. Thank you. So you have those. I would save those into the database here. So by the way, for those of you all that are asking and you want to be, again, intentional about growth, I'll re-forward what I sent into our group chat here just a little bit ago. I'll send it, and actually I'll send it at the end of the day. But earlier, I sent into NLG the, I can send it to you guys one more time, the SLC Key Talks. Okay, so the first one that I had in there is Brian Hurlman. There's a lot more in there. Okay, and this goes back to thinking, when I think about being intentional about your growth, like, Jonathan Castell, I'm going to kind of shut him out here a little bit. Jonathan's someone I know is very intentional about his growth. And one of the things that showed me that is last year, like Jonathan, there was a audio message that it was actually Brian Hurlman too. What was the name of that video, Jonathan? You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, you mean Art of Promotion? Or
Yeah, the Art of Promotion video. Okay, so anyways, random ass video from Brian Hurlman. It's not even like, if you ask Brian, he doesn't even know what it is. But there's a video that he did called The Art of Promotion. He gave a talk at something. And I remember Jonathan telling me that, like, I was just in a chat with him and he was like, he would go to sleep listening to this. Like he listened to that video. How many times have you watched that video, Jonathan, The Art of Promotion?
Probably like 15 times. Probably.
15 times the same video, and I'm saying that to you all. It's like, there's an opportunity to develop a level of mastery. Even when I hear Brian speak, sometimes I'm still like, I need to rewatch this or take notes on this in a different perspective. There's always a higher level, And again, this goes back to the original conversation at the beginning of today of like, hey, are you being intentional about your growth? There's some people that like, there's some people that literally watched this video and said like, oh, I already know all this stuff. And you've just barely paid attention this whole entire call. There's other people that like, you're going to watch this video 10 times before next summer and you're going to kick ass, and you're going to be intentional about your growth. So this is this goes back to, hey, people that are serious, they do like the extra stuff like this. This is the stuff that I did to get trained and prepared. I read books. I was intentional about my growth. I made sure I went on vectorconnect.com and watched videos from some of the best district managers and division managers in the company speaking about things that I wanted to actively improve on. There's a million resources out there for you guys. So I send them out there to you. I'm not going to give you all any assignments to watch these, but now there's more than just this, but I just gave you the best ones. So those are the ones I think. Brian Holman, A Day in the Life, Paige Weber, Developing a Championship AM Team. That one's awesome. If you're a branch manager, so anyone that's going out for a second time and you're going to have any person in leadership, you need to watch that one for sure. Drew Frank, one of the legends in our business. I'm going to make everyone in TLA watch the Mike Abramowitz Leading Effective Meetings, one of the best talks at SLC. Scott Dennis, Behind the Music, would just be good to hear from our region manager. It was a really great message. And then the other ones, I'd say Al D's talk was great. Katie Capone's talk was good. Trey Ketchum, just recruiting message. And then the Kaval Patel, which is on how to really just kind of interview keys to success as well with the new Apex interview. So you guys have those at your disposal and to utilize as a resource. And feel free to check those out, watch them all, watch none of them. That's your call. I do want to take out, what are some light bulbs or takeaways? Take a couple seconds. I'm sure you guys have some notes. You can post them into the chat here as well. What are some light bulbs or takeaways that you guys had from Brian's message? And we'll transition over to Mason here at 11:40. Yeah, Lindsay.
One thing like this summer when I was running my office, I kind of like the skeleton you went over last time during the last call. Like I literally had that in front of me every day, like using that. Okay, like what needs to get done? What needs to get done? And that's basically what Brian just went over. But what I did is I took note of the things that I really did not execute well, things that I missed, things that were probably more important that like just didn't get done. So I can intentionally add that into my routines for next summer.
Love it. Love it. Thanks for chiming in, Lindsay. And yeah, by the way, for those of you guys that haven't ran an office, like it really is easy to get overwhelmed and bogged down by like all the random shit that you have to do, but so it's like really important to be like, again, intentional. It's like a theme of today. It's intentionality of like, hey, what am I being intentional about getting done each day? It's very, very easy. Like there's nothing more frustrating than a manager than like realizing like you worked like 70, 80 hours last week and you guys like sold nothing. And you're like, how? You're like, I feel like I'm working all the time. How are we not like, they're like, how am I working and nothing's happening? There's like, nothing's working in the business, and a lot of times it's like, yes, you might be working a lot, but like, what are you actually getting done? What are the results? What are you getting? Are you focused on the, what you're accomplishing versus just how much you're doing stuff, right? Cool. What are some other things that came up for y'all? And it could be really, really specific or general.
For me, it was, there's so much, but the team meeting execution, I think this really just applies for any meeting in general. Teaching through recognition, talk about what you're building as a team, going over the standards, and of course, having fun. Every week I'm running an SMRA meeting and I try to run it just like a Wednesday team meeting. So that was kind of good for me and things I'm going to implement into my next meeting.
Yeah, just to echo that, he talked about operating at a high level with your team meetings. And what does a high level team meeting really look like? It looks like, a couple of things. Number one, it means you're teaching through recognition on your team, which means there's teaching through recognition, right? You have some sort of vision of what I'm building talk every single week at your team meeting, which you will always have as every single week, no matter what, fall, spring, summer. Talk about your standards and then make sure you're having fun. I think the fun thing is really important too, by the way. If you guys watch Paige Weber's video from the summer, Paige Weber, again, I highly recommend everyone go check that one out, even if you don't have assistants too. She was the, just so you guys know, she's done like $1.2 million so far for the year in August in her first full year as a district manager. Paige Weber will probably make 200 grand this year, her first year as a DM. She didn't even finish school. You know, think about that for a second. Not like revenue, like profit, 200 G's this year. She already won a Rolex in September. She's killing it. One of the things that she talked about this summer was like, hey, she like I took away from her message was that like it was a lot less like tactical and a lot more like cultural. And that really is, anyone that's been in a really high performing office can tell you that. When we broke the all-time national record for the company as a branch office, like it was a lot less tactical, it was a lot more cultural. And the culture that we were developing the team. And how you do that is like she was saying, like, hey, honestly, I think sometimes more important than teaching them how to close better is just like having a 30-minute cahoots session or like a group exercise or a team building camaraderie. Like she just focused on having fun in her meetings. And I think that's like an element that's very easy to lose as managers, but it's like, look, if you want to build a strong team and culture, it's like, how many people in your team meetings have gone there for like 2 or 3 weeks and they still have never like actually spoken to anyone else in the calls? Like how many people do you think hop on those calls? They sit there quietly, never say a word. And then the meeting ends, they just hop off. It's like, no, of course those people quit. They don't even know anyone. And they get a text message from you a couple times a week and then a 2-minute phone call. Yeah, of course they do. So be intentional and having fun. And then a group recruiting activity, which could be triple threat, could be SMRA post, could be everyone put me in a 3-way text right now with like your top 2 people, but some sort of group recruiting activity needs to happen every single week in a Wednesday team meeting. So love that. Thanks, Audrey. Jess?
Yeah, one thing I noticed is under every single day, sometimes the big 3 changed, but one thing that stayed the same was some sort of high power recruiting every single day. Like that was always one of the big 3, and not just like, it was specific. Like this day, I'm going to set up expectations. This day, we're going to close out the cycle. We have to see where we're at. And I circled that because it's in every single day. So that's like a good, like solid staple of like, if everything goes badly, that still needs to be done every day.
Yep. I love that. Anyone else? One last year, maybe before we wrap up? Anyone? All right, we're going to move on here for time wise. We're going to transition a little bit over to Mason, and we're going to start our master class series here. So this is all in the name of going national. This past summer we had 2 branches that were nationally ranked branches. Florida Caribbean, we had one of the highest branch averages, but we didn't have the highest branch average. So, we had a high one, but it wasn't even actually top 4 or 5. So there's an opportunity, I think, for us here too, especially with more branches being deployed and going out in our division, and some, in the name of staffing the region. The goal is how many nationally ranked top 20 branches can we have? This past year we had 2. So we're going to have Mason will probably speak on this one. We'll probably have Jonathan speak on the next round. Mason has not been nationally ranked just 1 time, but has been nationally ranked 2 times. And now this year is going out, is kind of what he's talking about, is doing $1 million as a branch team, which I don't know for a fact, but actually I do know for a fact. That's never been done before by anyone in the company. And there might be some record breaking along the way. And I'm just going to ask really a couple of simple questions for Mason here today as we're kicking things off here. Everyone on this call, I know, he doesn't need a huge introduction, but everyone I'm sure knows Mason. And thanks, Mason, for taking out the time and giving us the goods here for today. So really just a couple quick questions, and I'll do it kind of panel discussion. So I definitely take notes on this, an opportunity to learn from some other top performers. So first question, Mason. Well, I just want to get a little bit of an insight, and you could talk about what you did specifically last fall, but you can also talk about your perspective from your first fall too, before you went into it, or maybe what changed from one summer to the next. The first thing is just like, what are your thoughts on how to prepare, or what you did to prepare during the fall before you've actually gotten your territory, before you even got St. Pete, or the second time you already knew you were going there, but before you had officially gotten your territory in like January, what did you do in the fall to kind of prepare and help you set up your summer?
So the first fall, excuse me. So the fall before 2019, my first branch summer, something that I did, and I really didn't do much, right? I really didn't do much. I was pledging a fraternity, so I didn't have a ton of time. And I really didn't do anything outside of really being intentional when I'm showing up to TLA. I showed up to NLG calls as well, even though I was still a first year. And I really just made sure to show up the right way. That's something I really just made sure to do, and do all the assignments. That was the first fall. The second fall around, I basically just took that to another level. I had a couple people with me that I took with me, and I made sure that they were getting the right experience for the fall as well. I was never involved in staff. I was a little bit this past fall, this fall right now, but I was never involved in staff. I just made sure to show up to TLA the right way. I made sure to keep my career sales high, and I always made sure to, at least last fall and the fall before, during the pushes, put like a couple orders in. I didn't sell a crap ton. And I would encourage you to sell a lot if your career sales aren't where they should be. But because my career sales were over $100,000, I kind of just sat on that. And, Andrew, maybe you don't like me saying that, but I kind of did. But if you guys aren't at over 50 grand, at least maybe 40, 50 grand, you need to get there. Right. And use the fall as the opportunity to do that before you get really, really busy preparing in the spring. So I would use the fall to sell a little bit more. If you have the opportunity to, because when you have a lot of career sales, like Andrew was saying earlier, you have the confidence, but you also have a little bit of some clout with your representatives that you train over the summertime, right? If I was at $30,000 in sales going into my first branch summer, there's no way I would have been able to teach or coach that Justin Laurie to sell 50, right? He would have hit like 30 and then probably started laughing at me. Okay. And then also same with, I had, 4, 5, 6 people over 15, 20K. And it's because when they're trying to innovate or trying to do something, I'd be like, hey man, that's cool. You could do that. But, I'm at $120,000 in sales. And I think this is the way you should do it. You don't have to, but this is the way that works. So it's kind of like you use that clout to your advantage. It's funny saying clout, but it's like, if you sell more, people will look up to you more, and you'll just be able to be more successful. So that's something that you need to focus on in the fall if your career sales aren't over 50 grand, especially.
Cool. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that. I mean, anyone that's been an assistant manager before, how it rolls, like if you're an assistant manager one summer and like you made the cut, even though you were low in career sales, you're like 15K in sales. And then right around SE2, a couple of the people in the office find out what your career sales are. It's like, oh shit, it's like, now they know. And then it's like, wait, what? You're only at 50. And that does two things. Number one, it destroys your ability to coach that person. Number two, it also usually destroys that rep's mentality because they're like, oh, wait, this person's been here for a year and they're at 15K in career sales, right? Like think about it this way, guys. Here's a good exercise for you. Divide your career sales by how long you've been working with the company by months and calculate the average that you've sold per month. Like that's a good exercise for people to do because that's what reps will do. They're like, oh, well, when did you start? Like that's the first thing that'll happen. It's like, when did you start? It's like, so you just stopped. You've been working here for 2 years and you only sold for your first month on the job. What? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So I love that you're chiming in there, Mason. And it does really help. And that's Mason's point. Like Mason had a lot of success his first summer and quite frankly was kind of underprepared. Outside of like, he just told you guys, he didn't really go above and beyond. He just was intentional when he was there. But like, first summer, it was kind of like he didn't really know that much what he was doing, but like Mason was a nationally ranked branch his first summer. Why? Because he kind of got to fall back, even though he didn't know a lot, he fell back on a strength of his, which was his personal sales, and that like, and he was able to develop like his recruiting. How many people did you recruit your first summer, Mason?
Like 30. So honestly, Andrew, my first summer, my first fall, I really was not prepared. I wasn't prepared. I really wasn't prepared. And I probably am not the best example for being prepared during that fall, the first fall. But like you said, I just knew how to teach people how to sell. Right? I knew how to sell and I was able to teach people how to sell. So if you're not where you should be, take the fall, especially, right? Maybe not the spring, but if you want, take the fall and the spring, and get to a career sale point where no one that you recruit will pass you. Right? Make it so that no one you recruit will pass you. So whether you think that's 40, 50K or 60, 70K, whatever it is, get there so you won't train someone that will pass you.
Yep. I love that. And to Mason's point too, it's like the fall is the time to do it. Spring, like you don't want to be getting ready to open up your office as a branch or district manager and be worried about your career sales in the spring. There's 10,000 other things that you'll be worried about, that you're trying to get like your ducks in a row beforehand. You don't want to have selling and raising my startup as an extra thing in the spring. Like, you don't want to have to think about that stuff in the spring. I mean, you can sell in the spring. I'm not telling you guys not to, but like, the fall is the time to do it if you're going to make some moves. So thanks, Mason. All right, fast forward a little bit. Second question is it's basically the same question. That was the fall, basically up until you got your territory and got like, hey, you got promoted as a branch manager. In January to like April, what did you do in the spring that, like, same question, what did you do this spring? What are some keys that helped you prepare and execute at a high level going into the summer? And then what'd you do, I guess, so what'd you do the past 2 springs? And then what are you thinking about doing this spring to kick off your third?
So my first spring before my spring before my first summer probably wouldn't be the best example. All I did was run training and continue to show up to TLA events. But the spring of 2020, I had a call with Colton Horn, or we discussed, and he talked about how in his spring he basically had a spreadsheet between him and his assistant managers of about 1,000 people, right? That he was somehow connected to, or that his assistant managers are somehow connected to, right? We all know that your personal PRs are going to be the sharpest people that you probably know, right? So what me and Anthony ended up doing last spring, we made a spreadsheet. We called it the St. Pete Game Changer Marketing Team, made a spreadsheet, and every single person that I knew that lived in the Tampa Bay or St. Pete area, I put them on that spreadsheet. Anthony did the exact same thing. Whether we talked to them every single day or whether we didn't talk to them at all, they were just on our phones. But at the same time, I was also actively recruiting, if you will. I go to FSU, I'm in a fraternity, and I have a pretty good time. And when I would go out or go and hang out with friends, I didn't shove, Cutco down their throat. But if I knew the person was from Tampa, I didn't like go out. Excuse me. I kind of like use my influence to make it. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, Andrew, but I kind of like was just nice. Yeah, I recruited them. I used that alpha energy that Eddie was talking about, and I just recruited them. And then when I saw them out another time, I would bring it up. Hey, what are you doing this summer? What are your plans? What internships are you doing? Stuff like that. And I'll just add those people to the spreadsheet, right? I would just add them to the spreadsheet. I would get their phone number, and when the time comes, I know it might be super random. I'd give them a call, right? I'd give them a call, set them for an interview. If I got close with them, sometimes I would just talk more about it before the summer and say, hey, we'll see you in training, the first week of May, right? Or sometimes, you're going throughout the summer and you get recommended to that one kid you were talking to while you were out, and then you automatically have that connection, right? So, I wasn't going out to bars or clubs and whatnot and saying, hey, you need to be on my Cutco team, you need to sell knives with me. But I was just being a really nice person and just being very influential, and being someone that they would work for if the opportunity presented itself.
Yeah, I love that, Mason. It's funny that you say that too, because that reminded me of like what I used to do when I was at FSU too, which was like the same thing. Like I wasn't from Miami, but I knew I was branching in Miami. So whenever, and you guys could ask Eddie Squalos about this too. And that's kind of what we did. It was me, Eddie, and Gabe before we went out there and broke the record. We were all at FSU. And like anytime I would I knew in my fraternity who was from Miami. I knew what high schools they went to. I knew, I was like, all right, who else is from Miami who's going to be in that area? And I was just kind of like, most of them, nothing happened, but I was just like curious about like, who could I get? And ironically enough, that's actually how I ended up running into Nick Treptow that summer, who I didn't know. I ran into him in Tallahassee. I had a one-on-one with him at the Starbucks at Strozer, and I just connected with the guy and didn't really talk to him again. And then summer came around and he hit me back up. He came in and sold like $1,000. But he actually recommended Moises Jatim, and Moises ended up selling $40,000 that summer. He was one of the reasons why I had Eric Palacio come in, because he heard about the job from Eddie and Moises, and when he came in and saw they were in there, he came in on the team. Eddie Francia Or no, that's what we have on our team right now. Eddie DeArcos is who I was talking about, came in from the same group. I mean, this literally led to a strand of probably 400 grand from Columbus High School because of some random meeting that I had with some kid I was just kind of talking to that used to work at Cutco back in the day, but I knew he lived in Miami, could maybe give me an in, and it ended up happening. So you never know how it happens too.
It's just constantly networking and selling yourself. That's literally all it is. And if your school, you don't go out a lot, that doesn't even matter. Go join an on-campus organization. Go join something outside of Cutco and just start networking yourself, because you never know what it would lead to. Maybe it leads to someone, hey, I'm not really interested, but this kid really needs some work. This person needs some work. Call him or her up, right? So you're just constantly networking yourself. In my fraternity, I made sure I'm on the new member board, which means I get to handle the new member process for a couple of individuals in our new member class. And I made sure to pick a bunch of kids from Tampa, right? Now, obviously, like, it might seem kind of sleazy, but it's not, right? I love helping them out. I love developing them. And then at the same time, I'll help them get an awesome job in the summer if they wanted it, right? And I'm just networking.
I love that. And to Mason's point, by the way, Colton Horn, who was the number one branch the previous year, not this year, but the year before that, one of the things that he did in the spring was he literally had 80 people set for training going into the summer. He started interviewing people for his branch office in January. So he was doing one-on-one steroid interviews all through January, February, March, and April to make sure that he had literally 80 to 90 people set for his first training that he interviewed all throughout the spring. He was running interviews in the spring, all spring long, probably just 4 or 5 a week, but running those and setting them up. And he was like, now still, probably the majority of them didn't show. The show to that first training was awful, but he'd have, he had like 25, 30 people sitting in front of him for his very first training, all studs, and that's a good way to kick off your summer. When your first training, you've got 20 to 30 studs sitting in front of you and you can build your team around them. It's probably going to be a damn good branch. And that's what he did too, to set it up. Mason, what was your go-to, and you can talk about both summers, and this will be the last question. What was your go-to program? And I think one of the first ones you talked about selling at a high level, but what was most people, a lot of times, again, you're not going to be good at everything, but what strengths can you kind of rely on and hold on? So for Mason, what was your like go-to program during the summer, this past summer, that you kind of leaned on this summer that helped you with some of your success?
Yeah. So something that I really leaned on, not just the SMRA program, but just the PR program itself, just making sure that I was setting more than 20 PRs every single week, no matter what, hitting my personal fire number, because no matter who your assistants are, no matter who you hire as PR callers, no matter who it is, you will have the best show percentage in your office. So you want to make sure that you are prioritizing your fire number. And I'm sure it's like I'm beating a dead horse. You probably heard this 1,000 times at this point. But you really want to make sure you're prioritizing your fire number. And that's something I really relied on, because I knew that if I was going to set 20 PRs, around 12 to 15 of them, 12 to something around there, 10 to 15 were showing up to the interviews, right? And if someone shows up to the interview, the odds are is they're going to show to training too, right? So I really made sure to rely on my personal fire number. And then something else I really leaned on this summer was the SMRA program. And if you're not sold on it, I don't know what you're doing. It's ridiculous. Not because of not getting extra PR callers. My PR callers weren't very good. Their show percentages were in the 20s. And that's something I'm working on for this upcoming summer. But getting into the new networks was a huge bonus, right? When an SMRA is trained, they'll give you 20, 30, 40, 50 names, PR names, right? And that's how you get into a new number, new networks, right? And that's something I also did as actively recruiting around the fall and spring. I would, reach out and network myself with some of these like popular, well-known girls in different sororities and different clubs and things like that. And then when the time came in the summer, they're on the spreadsheet. Me and Anthony, or Anthony and I, would reach out and schedule them for an interview. Get into those networks. That's pretty much what I did. I can't even quantify how much CPO it generated. And that's something that we're going to do a better job this summer with tracking that, so I could actually figure that out.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's give some snaps, some claps, some gangster daps for Mason here. And thanks, Mason, for chiming in here. I think that's helpful insight for anybody that's just listening to. Big thing that I'm taking away from that. It's just kind of, again, I think it's like, this goes into me talking about, hey, are you thinking about next summer now? You know, a lot of it too, like a lot of what I did, a lot of what I think Mason did was just a lot of what Jonathan did. I know it's just like they were thinking about the summer before it actually happened, before it actually came about, of being like, hey, what is the summer I want to create? Because when you're doing that, you're like, okay, when you have conversations with people and it just like seems like a passive conversation, you're looking for opportunities to impact. It doesn't mean you're like doing a lot of extra stuff. It's just you're thinking in a little bit different way. So I love that too. Thanks for chiming in, Mason. Guys, here's what I want to do. We still need to assign mentor and mentee pairings. So I'm thinking the best way for us to do this is to, let me cancel this call. Someone taking PDI. All right, cool. I'm thinking the best way for us to do this is, how about you all post into the group chat, okay? If you are a second year person, if you're a second year, or if you want, if you're on this call and you feel called to, you can. I'm not sure if I'm going to approve it, but I want everyone to post if you were going to choose for yourself, who are your top 2 to 3 people that you could mentor just for like a 2 to 3 week period during the CTC push, the capture that cut push. And again, that might mean sales mentoring, coaching. It might mean just like, hey, they're going through a funk and they just need some encouragement, support. Might mean, hey, next level training for branch manager. I don't really know what that relationship is going to look like. You can decide that. But I want you to look at the TLA class, open up the attendance roster on your phone. And by the way, I ideally want you to try to reach out to someone that maybe is not in your office. You know, who's someone that you feel like you haven't spoken to, but you feel like you might connect with. And maybe if you already have a really good connection with someone, that can make it on its list. Top 2 to 3 people that you would pick. We'll probably have 1 to 2 people paired up for each person, and I'll announce those pairs tomorrow. But post that into the NLG chat, and we're going to wrap things up for the day. So I like to go around I actually won't go around the horn too much too, because there's a little bit too many people on the call. I'll just leave it at this. Have an awesome day, guys. Thanks for being engaged. Please post your biggest light bulbs from today into the TLA chat to wrap up. And then in the NLG chat, post your top 2 to 3 candidates. If you were going to have a mentee and you're going to mentor someone, who would be your top 2 to 3 people that you'd want to see? We'll wrap things up with that. Have an awesome day, everybody. Thanks for being engaged. Let's have an awesome TLA prep tomorrow and make sure that we are leading the way as the NLG group. Talk to y'all soon.